What's going on, guys? Welcome back to another MaaS360 YouTube video. We appreciate you stopping by and checking us out. Let us know in the comments section below what types of content you want to see on this channel going forward, and we will make it happen. Make sure you like this video if you like this type of content, and make sure you subscribe and hit the notification bell to be notified weekly when we post these new videos. In today's video, I am joined by Jason Testa. Jason is my partner on the technical engineering team. And in today's video, we're going to walk through the process of setting up Cloud Extender within the MaaS360 portal. Jason, thank you so much for hopping on. We appreciate it. And I know I have quite a few clients right now who want to get Cloud Extender set up, and this video is going to walk them through exactly how to do that. So thank you for the help here.
My pleasure. Glad to help. Excellent. And it's definitely a very helpful tool, making things easier as far as enrolling devices, workflows, streamlines things. So it's definitely a good tool to have, and it's utilized by a good percentage of customers, as I'm sure you've seen out there.
Awesome. Thank you for the context.
Yeah, no problem. So I'm going to go ahead and share out my screen, which is on a server 2019 R2. But this Cloud Extender piece can be set up on anything server 2008 R2 and above. And it just requires dual core processor, a few gigabytes of RAM, and it communicates with the MaaS360 cloud all via outbound traffic from the network over port 443. So it's very, very secure. Not a lot of, networking that needs to be done to get it working. And
wait, Jason, right?
I'm sorry, what was that?
This is lightweight too, correct?
Correct. Very lightweight. It's only about 30 megabyte or so file, so it is not too bad as far as the setup requirements and kind of the overhead to get it set up. And so just logging into my MaaS360 portal from the server here.
Okay.
To come in. Yep, you'll notice that I don't have any corporate users in my MaaS360 portal right now. I just have local users here in the local directory. As far as enrollment modes under my setup settings here, this is where you set up your modes of enrollment and your directories. And right now I only have the local MaaS360 directory. I don't have any corporate directories listed here. As you'll see, once I get Cloud Extender stood up, that will change.
Okay.
So the first thing that you do, when getting Cloud Extender set up is you log into your server and you need to download a file from MaaS360, which will be right here under Setup and then Cloud Extender. So it's a two-step process here. What you do first, Matt, is you click here to get a license key, and that emails out to the admin a license key that you'll plug in during the setup to authenticate that you're authorized to have the Cloud Extender there. And then also the executable file, which is the actual Cloud Extender program, which downloads onto the server from step 3 here. So I've gone ahead and done that on the server here. And here's my Cloud Extender executable here, so I'll run that. And it installs on a default folder. You can change the folder if you want to change where this gets installed. What I'll do here is grab my license key. Plug that in my account ID. So as you're okay with these terms and conditions here, you accept it, install. It's pretty quick to install as it's a pretty, small file. And what that does is once it installs some more terms and conditions that you're good with that, you hit continue. Just lets you know that if you have any firewall or antivirus running on the server, that could conflict with it. So you'll need to make exceptions for the Cloud Extender there. But this one is okay. So you'll notice that we have some modules here. The Cloud Extender is modular, so there's different pieces you can add into it later for additional functionality. Most customers that use the Cloud Extender will utilize user authentication and visibility, which is the user directory services for being able to see the users in user groups and authenticate the users from the corporate directory here. And then also the Exchange Activesync integration, which shows Activesync partnerships in their Exchange environment today, which can also be Office 365 in the cloud, and then lets them have some control over who can connect to that email going forward. So it gives them a little bit of control there. And then, some other options here that are listed: IBM Traveler certificate integration if they leverage Wi-Fi, VPN, or email certificates, or Zebra printer managing. And there's some other stuff too for internal access and a few other things, that may be covered later.
So Jason, going back to the Exchange piece, so now going forward, because they have Cloud Extender set up, they're going to have that conditional access workflow where only devices that are successfully enrolled in MaaS360 and compliant with the policy that's pushed down to that device can access and use email, correct?
That's correct. Yep. And we'll take a look at that in a moment here once we get it set up. So we'll go ahead and set up the first two, pretty much the base modules that anybody that's installing Cloud Extender most likely will want to use these two here for the authentication and visibility. You have some options as far as your directory type, and then if you want to allow any user from corporate directory or just certain users in a scope, if you wanted to narrow it down to just certain users being able to authenticate in this situation, but we'll leave any user for now. And then you go ahead and put in your credentials for the service account. Now this service account needs to be a domain user, no local admin on the server, which I've already gone ahead and done that for this one. Yep. Just takes a minute to basically make sure that service account has the correct permissions and that it's valid. So this can take anywhere from a few seconds up to maybe 30 seconds or so right here.
So far, pretty simple.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of times when we bring up Cloud Extender, customers come back and they think it's a big project and it's going to be a very complicated process to get this set up. But so far, pretty straightforward.
Absolutely. It's pretty straightforward to set up, both for like, somebody that's been around and done a lot of, networking and technical support in the past, or even somebody that hasn't done a lot of it. Based on our documentation that we have in the IBM Knowledge Center, they can get pretty far to get that installed. And of course, if they need help, we're here to help them out as well.
And Jason, you've worked on a ton of I mean, you've been at IBM MaaS360 for a long time. What
Yes.
percentage of clients would you think are utilizing this workflow within their environment right now?
I would say upwards of 80, 70,
Okay.
80%, maybe, or maybe higher.
Yeah.
I would say that number is going up, right? In the past, this kind of thing did seem to be a little more advanced than some customers really needed. And they would just go ahead and manage users locally in the MaaS360 portal and just be done with it, call it a day. But as companies are getting larger and larger and they need mobile device management that's more secure and more tied in and streamlined with their directory, with their environment, they're going the route of Cloud Extender for their on-prem directory more often than they used to, for sure.
Gotcha.
Right. So once you get that service account configured, you get to this test configuration page, and this is just basically testing the configuration and make sure it's going to work. So you can put any username and password from the domain and hit test, and you'd get a successful test there. I'm not going to, because I only have the one user with the password now. We've already verified that that's good. So all you have to do once you test it and it works is hit save here. And that kind of turns blue on the switch, denoting that user authentication is now enabled and set up. Once you
Okay.
have that done, because the requirements for visibility are the same as authentication, it actually leverages the same user account and all the passwords and everything like that from the user authentication piece. So visibility is just as simple as basically checking that box, and that's already set up. You could go into it and change the user account if you wanted to, but there's not really a need to, because it has the same requirements as the authentication. So you can actually just check that box. But if you did want to change it, you can go in here, you can actually click on it, and there's a kind of an edit function where you can edit that user account to be different. Right? So that takes us to the next piece, which is the Exchange Activesync integration. So for this demonstration, I have an Office 365 account set up. So the requirements for this piece are a little bit different from just the user directory service account. So you do need to add, if you have on-prem Exchange, one of these options here, you actually need to have organization management rights on that service account, as well as the domain user and local admin. So an additional privilege on that user account for the on-prem Exchange options. Or for Office 365, you need to have a global admin account on Office 365 to do that integration.
Okay.
Once you click next there, for Office 365, it actually pre-configures the server host name here. But if you're doing on-prem Exchange, you would want the internal URL for an Exchange server. So it wouldn't be a load balancer or anything like that. It would be one of the actual Exchange servers. You would put the internal URL here, and that would configure it to see all the Exchange servers in that environment based on that. If you use SSL, you would have that checked here. Because this is internal, though, typically you won't use SSL, but for Office 365, you do.
Okay.
And then you put in your account here. Just want to hit validate all accounts. And this is just making sure that it's a valid account again, and that it has the proper permissions, which in this case would be a global admin account in Office 365.
Okay.
Okay. And this one does tend to take a little bit longer than the corporate directory setup here, but looks like it's good. Has a green check mark denoting that everything checked out okay. At that point, you can hit next and then save. And that's really it. So now we have the Exchange integration for the Office 365 environment here, as well as the user authentication and visibility piece. So at this point, Cloud Extender is all set up from the server side, so you can actually just close out the configuration tool and then head back into your MaaS360 portal, which we have here. I'll go back to the home page to see if it's pulling anything in. So typically after setting up Cloud Extender, it could take anywhere from 15 minutes up to about an hour to start pulling into users and any Activesync devices that might be in the environment. Let's see, pulling in any users yet? Not pulling in any users just yet. Let's see if we're pulling any device records. Does take some time. Yeah, it could take, like I said, up to an hour. Typically, it's a little bit quicker than that, and we may see it here, but yeah, we'll circle
I'm
back
sure it
to
depends
that.
on how many
So
users they have.
yeah, that's true, and I don't have a lot of users, so it might be a bit quicker. So we'll circle back to that. In the meantime, I can show you a couple options here. So now that we have that integration done, we can go back into settings. And I showed you before, you only had the MaaS360 directory here. And at this point, it's not updated yet. So this might be taking its time, but you'll see these update here. Let's see. Shows the cloud extender. So it is still configuring. It says may take up to 10 minutes to pull in all the options. So it does recognize that we set up Cloud Extender, just kind of configuring it now.
Cool.
It'll take
And
some
it is
time.
important to note because a lot of clients will come back and say, well, hey, Matt, Jason, that sounds interesting. I definitely want Cloud Extender, but how much is this going to cost if I'm a current customer to add it to my account, or if I'm a net new customer to bring this on within my environment? This is offered for all of our clients across all different bundles, from essentials all the way up to enterprise, built right in.
That's correct. And that's definitely an important note. Yeah, a lot of customers do think it costs a lot of money to do this, and it's totally part of MaaS360 right out of the box. So definitely good information there. So this may take a little bit of time. See if we have anything under settings. So under setup cloud extender settings, this is where you would leverage kind of that conditional access that you were referring to with the cloud extender, leveraging auto quarantine. So that's under setup cloud extender settings, Exchange Activesync here. And it looks like we can see these options now. So out of the box, the cloud extender is set to retain your Exchange server settings. However, it's set up right now in your environment. So if you have auto quarantine already set up and with any rules there, that's still going to remain intact, unchanged. As you
Okay.
come in here, you can then go ahead and enable auto quarantine, which gives you some additional options, or you can disable it outright so that it's no longer functioning whatsoever. But if you do enable it, that's where you have the options to have conditional access. So at that point, you can auto approve enrolled devices. So if some user, let's say they forgot their device over the weekend, they just go ahead and configure their email on their daughter's iPad to check email. Well, that device would be quarantined if this was enabled here. And then if the device is enrolled in MaaS360, it can be auto approved with this checkbox. However, if it's not enrolled, then that email account would be quarantined and that device would not sync up with email. So you have some control over
There
it
you
that
go.
way. Um,
Yeah.
yep. And then also, we can take it a step further. So if you do the auto approve enroll devices, you can then actually disable use of native email client, which is essentially any email client that's not the MaaS360 secure mail client specifically, which gives you additional data leakage prevention. Gives some additional security there around the email, and that's MaaS360 specific. So if you were to enable this, either for all devices straight out, so any device that tries to connect to corporate mail, or any just devices that have secure mail pushed out via workplace policy, this would disable anything except for the MaaS360 mail client. So that's an additional step you can take it there.
So if I am using secure mail within my environment, I'm a current MaaS360 customer. Those employees will not have the ability to download from the App Store the native email application and use it outside of the container. They have to use that secure mail feature.
That's correct. Yeah, if they try to manually configure email on the native email client or any other email client, such as Outlook even, it wouldn't work. If this was set, it would only work for the MaaS360 mail client. The way we're able to do that is the MaaS360 mail client creates its own unique device ID in Exchange, and that's how we're able to tell that it's the MaaS360 client as opposed to a different client that creates its own device record. And in this case, it would be quarantine unless it was that MaaS360 client here.
Awesome.
You have some other options too with that Cloud Extender integration with Exchange a little bit further down. So these are your timers. Don't recommend changing these, but you can change these depending on if you want it to check in for new devices or new device records more frequently than typical. It'll be about every hour that it checks in. And it does a full refresh every once a week on Sunday. So that's here Sunday. It'll
Okay.
do a full refresh and just re-upload all the information as new. You can change any of these settings if you would like to, but typically they're left as is. But another cool thing that we can do is enable automated removal of old Activesync records. And what this does is if there's Activesync records in Exchange that we're pulling in via the Cloud Extender and they haven't connected to Exchange in a while, and you can change that period of inactivity from 7 days to 180 days. We'll go ahead and remove those Activesync records from Exchange to help clean up the environment. And of course, those records would no longer show in MaaS360 either. So it's a way you can kind of use MaaS360 and that integration to help clean up the Exchange environment as well.
Jason,
And
question
one
for
thing
you.
with this too. Yep.
With that workflow there, so if I'm an employee right now, my past employer, I still have in my email on my device sometimes pops up. Would that help
Mhm.
with cleaning that up? Because I haven't logged in 6 months.
It would help clean it up from the environment, but it actually, that's a good question, Matt. So it doesn't do anything to the device, right? So it's just
Okay.
an environmental cleanup tool. But let's say, you're out for a while, you're on leave, somebody's out for leave, they've been out for, in this case, more than 30 days. We'll remove those records from Exchange and from MaaS360. However, that doesn't remove anything from the device. So it's not a device that was broken, fell in some water, decommissioned. If it actually is still being used and has the email account still on it, the next time the user turns it back on, it's going to check back in, recreate that
Got it.
partnership, and
So
that
that's when
device
you
will
would
go.
select to
Yeah.
wipe that device, right? Say
Correct.
it's a
If you wanted
declared
to remove,
device.
yeah, if you wanted to remove email from that device because the user is no longer, supposed to receive email, you could go a different route for that. But this here is just cleaning up the records from a inactivity standpoint. So it's not removing anything from the device. So in that case, you can actually be as aggressive as you want to with this. You can say, hey, the device hasn't connected in a week. We're going to remove those records. That's not going to negatively affect any users out there if they still have email. They just haven't turned it on in a while. It's just going to reconnect. So it's going to keep the environment as clean as possible without any negative impact.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah. All right, cool.
Perfect.
So I just want to show you that, but I'm not going to save that here. So I'll hit cancel and let's see how Cloud Extender is doing. So it looks like both check marks have turned green here and starting to pull in everything. It shows you your services configured, user
Mm-hmm.
auth, visibility, and Exchange Activesync integration. So at that point, we should see some other options here as far as enrollment settings. So we see AD here now as an option for user directories
Yeah.
and also for authentication. And then you can dictate your default. So there's a little box here where you can set either the MaaS360 local directory or AD on-prem as the default authentication mode. And then you can use the other mode as an overwrite if you wanted to as well. So you can still leverage both the local directory and corporate AD in this case for authentication if you wanted to. And now that we have the user visibility source set to corporate as well, in the user directory, you should see some additional users there now.
There we go.
So before there
Yep.
was only 4 local users yet, but now you're seeing some corporate users being pulled in from AD here. That shows that here, user directory AD. So you're able to see which users are local and which are from the corporate directory. All
So
right,
we have
one other
two
cool.
flows really in play here, Jason. We have that conditional access workflow for email, and then we have the workflow where we're going to streamline the process to add new users into the portal.
Correct. That's two of the main things. And then another main thing that you can do, I mentioned groups. So right out of the
Yep.
box, none of the security groups will come in from AD. You just see the users here that are part of the scope that you configured. In this case, it was my complete directory, but you can limit this scope as well if you don't want to pull in all your users. But another important piece is the group. So you can go into groups here and you'll see your out of the box MaaS360 groups that we give you, but you can also go ahead, see here, might not have configured just yet. You can go into your user directory and you can do add user directory group now. So this is based on the corporate Active Directory and the Cloud Extender integration. So you can start typing the name of a distinguished name of one of the groups you want to leverage in MaaS360.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see if I have one here. So you can select that group, hit save. That imports the group into MaaS360. And then at that point, it's denoted here by the icon is users instead of a device. So it's not a device-based group. It's based on the users in this administrative group. Any users that are in this administrative group, for instance, you'll be able to apply different applications to them, distribute applications here, change the policy. So you can have specific policies on these users of this group. So basically any user that enrolls as part of this group will get the specific policy applications, and you can take some actions on this group as well from a device standpoint and leverage this group. So it lets you kind of manage the groups through your corporate directory and leverage, those groups as they are without having to come in and manage them also in MaaS360 locally. So that's pretty helpful to have that.
Awesome.
Right.
Better way to organize and streamline the process of just managing all the devices and users within the portal.
That's correct. Let's see. And we're pulling in a bit more devices as well.
There you go. Yeah. What do we start with? 4, and now we're at we're up to 13.
Correct. So now you could see in the inventory, we have a bunch more devices here now, other than the 3 or 4 that were originally in there. The couple that were in here are enrolled devices. They were fully managed, but now we're pulling in devices from Exchange that are just Activesync managed. They have an Activesync partnership, meaning email from the corporate email environment was configured on there at some point and made that partnership, and we're pulling in those records. And it shows you here that those are not enrolled, they're Activesync managed. But it shows you those device records here as well in your MaaS360 portal under one pane of glass, so you don't have to constantly log into Exchange to administer these devices as well. You can do it right through MaaS360. And one thing to note is because they're in MaaS360 and we have that integration with Exchange, even though these devices are not fully enrolled, the ones that are not enrolled here under the managed status, we do have Activesync level controls on them, so you can come into them and wipe the device through Exchange if you wanted to block email, because if the user goes rogue, something's going on with that one, you can block it directly through MaaS360 without having to go back and forth between the Exchange console and MaaS360 as well. So it's a good option to have.
Very good option.
Yeah, so Matt, that's pretty much all I had with regard to Cloud Extender. I'm not sure if you had any other questions, anything else that I might be overlooking here.
No, Jason, I really appreciate running through this. Like I started the video off with, so many clients right now. I mean, you mentioned 80% of clients are utilizing Cloud Extender within their environment. I feel like I have a good chunk of that 20% right now, Jason, that I'm working with, who don't have it currently set up and are looking to get these workflows when it comes to adding devices and the conditional access workflow for locking down their emails for data leakage purposes. This was awesome. Guys, as you're watching this video, if there's any questions that come up, anything that needs further clarification, drop a comment in the comment section below, and Jason and I are more than happy to hop on and make future videos talking through these workflows and this topic. Make sure you like the video, subscribe to the channel, and look out for these videos on a weekly basis. But again, Jason, thank you so much for hopping on here and talking through this. And now that we're partnering up, Jason, I know we're going to be talking through this workflow and how this is going to work for our clients in 2022. Super pumped.
We absolutely are. No doubt about it. My pleasure, Matt. I'll talk to you next time.
Perfect. Sounds great, Jason. Thanks.
See ya.